Right, let's get started. So for those of you who have been following me for some time or have read my book, How to English, you'll know that I'm kind of obsessed with mistakes. Now, not obsessed with mistakes in a bad way, I'm obsessed with mistakes in a good way. Mistakes are where most of your learning is going to come from, or where most of your learning should come from. You don't want to worry about making mistakes, you want to worry about not repeating mistakes. So all evolution, all improvement comes from making mistakes. You make a mistake, you identify that it's a mistake, and then that is your best opportunity to learn. So what is stopping you right now from being a C1 or a C2? Imagine you're a B1 or B2. What is it that's preventing you right now from being a C1 or a C2? Essentially, it's mistakes that you're making. So if you're above B1, if you're B1 or B2, you've got enough English in your head to be the same as a C1 or C2. The only reason why you're not is that you're making mistakes, and those mistakes bring your level down. So you really don't want to worry too much about learning more English and accumulating more English words, expressions, phrases, etc. What you really want to do is try to clean up the English that you have, because it's those little imperfections in your English, the little mistakes which are stopping you from being a C1 or C2. It's not learning more. You don't necessarily need to learn more and more, or at least that should not be your focus. Your focus should be to perfect the English that you have and remove those typical mistakes that you're making. So the easiest way to do this is by removing the typical repetitive mistakes that you know you're making. So there are two kinds of mistakes that you're making right now when you speak in English or write in English. Mistakes that you know you make, they're the worst. And then mistakes that you don't know that you're making. That's where a native speaker or a teacher can identify you or can help you identify those mistakes that you don't know that you're making. But the worst ones are those typical repetitive mistakes that you know you're making all the time. Your absolute priority right now, before you learn anything else in English, is to get rid of those typical repetitive mistakes. They are the worst ones because you've been making them for years and years and years. As I said, making mistakes is okay. There's nothing wrong with making mistakes. Making the same mistake over and over again, it's just going to pull you back. You're not going to improve ever if you're making those typical repetitive mistakes. So what do? Well, you take a few minutes after watching this or listening to this, and you get a piece of paper and a pen, and you write down the list of your most typical mistakes. Now, instantly you'll be able to write down 5. I guarantee. You know that you're making 5 mistakes that you know you're making all the time. Write those down, but then spend a bit more time. Really go deep into your head and try and find mistakes that you know you're making or you suspect that you might be making. You should be able to find a list of, well, at least 10, but I would recommend 20, even 30 if you can. Write a list of the most typical mistakes that you know you're making when you speak in English now. And then what should you do? Well, the only thing that you should do for at least the next month is to work on removing those mistakes. If you get rid of those mistakes, you're instantly going to be moving up a level. Getting rid of those mistakes will clean up the English that you have. It will perfect the English that you have, and then it'll be much easier to learn more English and start to make more progress. So write a list of 20, 30 maybe, mistakes that you know you're making. As I said, the first 5 will come out very quickly. But then you maybe need to spend 10, 15 minutes really having a look in your head and trying to find those mistakes that you think you're making, you suspect you might be making. And then you need to learn those. You need to work to remove those mistakes. Now, it won't be easy in the beginning. You will have to dedicate time to removing those mistakes. Why? Well, because you've been making those mistakes for maybe 10, 20, 30 years maybe, repeating the same mistake over and over again. So to remove something that's so solidified in your head will require a little bit of time, effort, and particularly practice. You need to practice. It's no good just reading a definition or an explanation and thinking, I understand it. No, it's not about understanding. It's about not making the mistake again. So you really do need to practice it to perfection until you do not make it again.